Hello friends and welcome to another tier list. This time we're going to cover the position 4 supports, going to do the pro scene and then the pub scene, going to take some of your feedback, try to touch on all the pub supports, so we got to go fast because there's a lot of them that end up being played as position 4s. For the pro scene, these are your top 3 position 4s, and really I would say like Night Stalker and Muerta are the most popular. I think Weaver has been starting to drop off a little bit. Night Stalker, he gets banned a lot. He did get a small nerf in the 7.38C. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But it's weird. It's new to a lot of people. But getting Hunter in the Night for free and then taking the Night Reigns facet means that you can bully a lot of the position 5s in the lane. Even if you can't, you just do creep dragging. So no matter what, you're having an okay time in the lane. And then most heroes don't rotate mid too early because it takes too much time for the level of investment. But Night Stalker can go mid very quickly without any boots or anything potentially because he's just so fast and the enemies don't see it coming because it's nighttime. And if you remove their mid ward based on like the early smokes and all that stuff, then you can get a surprise gank winning the mid lane. After that, the vision superiority with the ultimate and then the AoE silence is very strong, especially if you consider it as a 1-for-1 support trade. Night Stalker runs at the enemy who is a position 5 that is viable right now. Ancient Apparition, there we go. Who's going to win that one-on-one? Even if these two heroes have the exact same net worth, it's going to be the Night Stalker. So Night Stalker is taking out one support from the enemy team and providing this massive vision range for everyone else to know where to dodge, where to target the next person, and then after you kill AA, you go find the next target. So I know it is unconventional if it's new to you. I have some examples in my stream VODs if you want to see those, or just keep an eye on Pro Dota. He regularly makes it in as a position 4 and is banned a lot of the time. Because he's banned so much, Muerta ends up being the safe follow-up for a lot of drafts. It doesn't really reveal anything. We could say, oh, there's flex value, and that's like kind of true, but it's so rare. It is so rare to actually see a carry Muerta, even when it makes sense. It just doesn't seem like the power is there. As a position 4, Deadshot and the Calling are plenty strong in the lane and also for the entire rest of the game. It is really good, but you have to be on point with your skill shots. You end up using the ultimate just to stay alive, to use your abilities even more. You go Atos, sometimes into Gleipnir, but mostly Atos into Ags, which makes Deadshot hit everything and fear everything, and then that's just crazy value. It is this massive long-range crowd control that you can just keep firing again and again and again. Really good, really, really, really good. So safe every single game, and that's why you see it so often. She does have one of the worst shards in the game for a support to pick up early, so that's a bit unfortunate in the Tormentor, but that's actually just a testament to how good the rest of her kit is. If she does get a lot of kills, and that's actually even more scaling potential as the game goes on. But yeah, it's not really something you play for compared to some of these other supports on this list. Weaver with Hive Mind gets a lot of XP. You go for a lot of trades in the early game, and you just like throw the bugs on people. You end up pretty high level, and with the amount of fighting that is happening right now, the Swarm is very useful. It's super long range, very annoying to deal with the bugs. So you get a lot of scouting information in these team fights. They lose armor, you keep track of them, and you're getting XP the whole time. So you get higher leveled abilities. And so you're like time-lapsing faster, you are getting the higher levels of Shikuchi moving everywhere. If you're having a great game, then of course you can scale as a right-clicking core who's really good at creep cutting. You can drag the game out forever because your wave clear with the Swarm, Shikuchi, and the Shard, if you get it, is insanely good. And if they find you, you can time-lapse, Shikuchi, all that stuff. So very annoying support. But I think the pros are learning how to deal with it, especially when you compare him to the other position 4s. They actually have really good tools at dealing with Weaver, which is mainly silences. So if you have the choice, you typically go for one of these two. And if they get banned out, if they get taken, well, actually, it's more banned out because if they're taken, you don't really want to play Weaver into them. So when they're banned out, that's when you might see the Weaver 4s come out. But I do think he's been declining a little bit, and I think he has the worst win rate compared to these two. Other position 4s you might see, Keeper of the Light is making a comeback. People are taking Recall, and if you get the Shard, you get 2 charges of Recall. Your lane is not the strongest, but you get by. You use Blinding Light, knock people around. If your off-laner has some kind of spell combo, which, I mean, typically you're going to draft for that in the the pros, you just like, you get through the lanes, you do stacks because you're so fast, and then at some point, you just start playing around the mid hero. Ember and Storm are the top 2. Tiny is probably the 3rd follow-up. Other mids work, but I'd say you're really hoping to get one of those three if you're drafting the keeper, because at that point, Chakra Magic gives you mana and reduces the cooldown, like speeds up the cooldowns. So Storm, double Static Remnant, Ember, double Slights, double Chains coming out faster, Avalanche Toss combos coming out faster. And so you just play this insanely fast tempo game as a pro team. You're like, okay, come clear the stacks. Oh, you have no mana? Yeah, you have mana again. Chakra Magic, recall on top of you. You go gank bottom. Then he twin gates top, recalls the Storm back in, gank this guy. Coddle TPs to the mid lane, recalls him back in. Now you gank this guy. Super fast gameplay with the keeper. I think he's gaining popularity. I think he's going to become S tier. I feel like Weaver is dropping down. The issue is that you need a more specific draft to make the keeper work. Like the offlaner has to get by and combo with him to some degree. The mid wants to be a very tempo hero, and then you want to play relatively fast. So all the heroes have to be more fast-paced oriented. So it's a more specific draft compared to the very generic value of Muerta and Night Stalker and then Weaver to some extent. And I think that's why he's maybe a little lower, but these guys get banned so much that I expect to see more keeper going forward. Tusk, still good, kind of covered in the position 5s, and if you're familiar with Tusk at all, you know what he does. He does like everything with barely any items. With the blink, you get so much. I really want to emphasize the snowball save potential. This current patch, when we have things like Darkseer and Magnus, pulling everyone together for the wombo combos. Some of these AoE silences also annoying for him to deal with, because then you can't snowball save people, and that's why, again, I think it's very useful when they're banned out. That's when you're seeing Tusk, and if they're not banned out, then you're getting one of these guys first. But once those bans are out, there's many saves you can have with the blink snowball, and if you don't need to do the save, then you just like blink, punch people to initiate, and you do the usual Tusk stuff. Wind Ranger support is catching on a little bit. I'm actually still a little iffy on it. I might have her in B tier, really. People like the laning. It's always been good, right? Right-click trades with Wind Run, and she just got 3 more base damage, so you just whittle people away in the laning stage. People were happy-ish with the kill shot idea in all these early fights. Good scouting by just like chucking out the power shots, and there's a lot of tanky heroes. So when you have that kill threshold, it's even more value in these early fights, and then you just keep spamming it out in the fights. But you gotta land the power shots, you gotta land the shackle shots, and that's where really high skill position 4s do great. But if even a couple of them miss throughout the game, suddenly the impact feels a lot worse. It feels a lot more finicky than, even though I know Deadshot and the Calling are kind of skill shots, it feels way easier to use those than like Power Shot and Shackle Shot. So I really think there are certain players who love Wind Ranger and want to pick her more, but for a lot of other teams where they're not as experienced with Wind Ranger, she feels more B to even C tier, and that's why I'm still undecided on her as a support. I think Ringmaster is great. I think we're all still learning the best combos with Ringmaster, but I feel he brings a lot of damage in the lane between Tame the Beast and Impalement Arts, and you can go one or the other. If you have setup, Tame the Beast, I think, gives you a little bit more damage in a particular fight and more crowd control because it's got the fear, so you might need that more. Otherwise, Impalement Arts does percent HP, and you get charges of it. They don't stack, though, so in a given fight, you can't just, like, chuck all of them at once and then kill someone quickly. So Impalement Art seems better for, we need to get through this lane, need to keep harassing, keep chucking Impalement Arts. If you get involved in more fights, we'll see Tame the Beast more. Escape Act, good save. Wheel of Wonder, fantastic. It's very similar to the position 5 Ringmaster that I talked about in the last video, but this time you're position 4. You're just like playing with a different lane combo. I'm not sure which is better in pubs. It feels good to me either way. Pro scene, still got to see more people play it, and then maybe I'll get a better idea for it. Finally, Bounty Hunter. He is probably the least played of these top tier heroes, so maybe we can move him down, but I feel like when you want that invis scouting, he is the best. Track gold is really good in all these early fights, and you build whatever aura your team needs. You always have a decent lane because your base abilities are good. You force the enemy to get sentries, and then you can just creep drag if it's like really bad. So I still think some teams play really well around Bounty Hunter. It's kind of similar to Keeper. You need a certain style of draft where the lanes have to go okay, and then you have to be able to get early kills. But if you do, then it's great. You're like snowballing, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's good. I like it, but it does require that draft to go with it. We're not going to cover every single one of these for the pro tier, but just to highlight a couple, we see some Rickies Riki support was coming back when Dazzle core was all the rage. I think now that Dazzle is dropping off, Riki is going to drop off as well. So this might move down a little bit. The silence and the shard is just, it was particularly good versus the Dazzle. Tiny 4, I actually don't think it's great, but teams are flexing it if they pick the Tiny early, and technically the crash landing buff is good for support Tiny, so maybe we'll see a little more. Dark Willow might be bumped up a tier. I think I've been seeing some good performances from her. I'm a little surprised Rubik is not more popular with the amount of good steals there are, such as Magnus, RP, and all that stuff. Jakiro, but I think his landing stage is just not as good as other heroes, and so you just enter the early game at a lower level. You're not even 6 to seal spells yet. I think if his landing stage gets buffed, we'll suddenly see a lot more Rubik. Marcy and Hoodwink and Batrider and Snapfire, they all might be making a comeback based on the 7.3 HC buffs, but I haven't gotten to see it too much. 3 of them a little bit. Batrider, not quite yet. I am not sure. I hear talk that people are pretty happy, or there's like a range of opinions, and that's why I'm not sure. Some people seem to think it's good. Some people are like, it's not enough. And then that's just where the pro teams, they got to try it, and we got to see it come into play. So these 4 might get more popular. I would have the highest hopes for Marcy. I was doing a little bit of math. The rebound, like when you bring an offlaner in, it's a lot of damage. And I feel like that could get you snowballing, get a lot of kills, and that could be good. So I have the highest hopes for Marcy. The rest, yeah, I don't have too much to say. They're just not good for various reasons. That at the pro level is because they don't fit the meta stuff I described in the support meta video. Check it out if you haven't. Some of them are good at early fighting, but like the numbers and stuff aren't there. Faceless Void is one you might have seen recently. Some pro teams try. Tidebound and Liquid in particular, but now with Leash being gone from Time Zone, I don't think you'll see it anymore. Position 4 tier list is going to look extremely different for pub games. I included every single support in here that I think I see people play as a support in various pubs. The reason this is doable is because the support meta that I just self-promoted, you can check that video out. There's also another video where I describe the actual differences between position 4 and position 5. Also suggest you check that out for a huge boost in your knowledge base and blah, 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 whatever. That doesn't happen in most pub games. And so the specific things that make a position 4 hero don't fully matter. It's why you see such a varied performance from position 4s more than the other support role. Most people end up playing position 4 the same as position 5. And I would say that's true between Herald up to Legend. Archon and Ancient and Divine, it's maybe 30% people start to play position 4, like truly position 4. And then only as you get into Immortal and higher do you see like more and more actual position 4s. But of course, you will still see sometimes some of these heroes played there. That is why I've included every single support hero in here, because that's just the reality. You will run into position 5s, don't play this hero position 4, but then people do it and it works because people don't play the lanes correctly, the position 4s, but also the position 5s and the carries. They're supposed to have this whole defensive advantage, blah, blah, ooh, shove the lane right away, oh, you know? And then the greedy position 5s being played as position 4s and it shouldn't work. It does work because you're given a game that works. So that's why this entire hero pool is here, is like doubled the amount from the pro tier list. That is the difference. I don't really recommend it. If you guys truly want to become a position 4 player, if you're new to the game and you're new to learning position 4, you can take some of the position 5s you're comfortable with and play them as position 4s. But if you really want to have high impact every single game, no matter what happens, whether it's being played correctly or not, I really do recommend trying to pick some of the actual position 4 heroes shown in the pro tier list and learn how to play those really well, rather than forcing a like Oracle position 5 to be working as a position 4. Again, it's a video game, so do what you want. You know, I'm not here to judge, but if we're talking about the meta, because it's a tier list, then that's what I'm going to tell you guys. All right, with all that rambling out of the way, let's get into it. I'm going to skip over these 3 because it's the exact same as the position 5 tier list. They all strong lanes. Shadow Shaman's maybe the worst, but it's still okay. They all scale really well and can win the game in various ways that I covered in the position 5 tier list. And it's the same from position 4. just because people don't play the lanes differently. So we could say, oh, position 4 will get more farm. Let's be real. The position 5 didn't know that. They're farming just as well. So you're just going to have a lot of farm available to you, and that's why the scaling potential is there for these guys to win the big late game team fights or to push objectives on their own. Witch Doctor is a pub classic. The Maledict cast combo ultimate just always gets kills because people are not positioning well. I think I have him bumped up from the position 5 tier list. Kind of whatever. If you wanted to move him down, I wouldn't care. I think from position 4, you just happen to have slightly better starts where position 1s and 5s tend to be a little weaker, but still have terrible positioning in most pubs and shove the lane out. So it's easier to get kills in the lane, and then you get more gold, so you get the Aghanims faster, and it just works. I think he's really about the same as a position 4 or 5. So if you want to move him out of the S tier, I don't really care. Weaver and Night Stalker, I think, are still good, but you really need to know what you're doing with them, and your team can't tilt out. I'd say Weaver is a little bit more normalized as a support, and you can get away with a lot on this hero if you learn to play Weaver. Then you can win so many pubs because you can be a proper support, but also have really good scaling potential and really good split pushing. I really like it. I think Night Stalker value will be the same, but you're more likely to have teammates who don't understand what you do. That's okay in the first night because you're just really strong. You just do the same stuff. But when it comes to the first day, 5:15 to 10, and people are like, you need to come help me in the lane, you need to come do this. You're like, you're supposed to give me space because I'm useless right now. I need my level 6. I need to just do kind of bare minimum, soak up XP, and no one's going to give you that. And then the rest of your game will start to fall behind because now it's going to be second night, but you're going to maybe be underleveled, underfarmed, and it gets really tough. So you're going to have to get a lot done in that first night to give you a stronger start than you're supposed to, that you would see in the pro games, because, you know, in pubs, they're just like, what's a Night Stalker support? And then you like beat them to death, so you get a bunch of kills. I could see that working, and why I'm still going to include him in here. And as the game drags on late, you know, he's a off-laner hero being played as support, so you have a lot of scaling potential. So I think it's good, but you need to know what you're doing, and that might be tricky the first couple times you play him. Phoenix 4, people just don't know what Phoenix does, so it's the same as position 5. You just out-trade people. You do a lot in team fights, and you can get a lot going. Spirit Breaker, pub games are eternally lacking in chain stuns, or just stuns in general, and especially BKB piercing stuns. So Spirit Breaker brings all of that on his own. You're really good at dragging games out by creep cutting and all that stuff, because you just like charge around the map and people waste their time chasing you, then you just like TP'd out, charge somewhere else. So you can get a lot done with Spirit Breaker, even if he's not technically the best right now. He just fits so many pub games. Same deal with Clockwork. A little less split pushing on Clockwork, but a little better early aggression thanks to Battery Assault and Power Cogs. And especially if people don't know how to dodge the Power Cogs in the early game, you can get so many free kills in the lane with that. AA, still think he's good. I just think he's a little less aggressive potential as a position 4 compared to some of these other options of position 4s. But later on, you still do the same stuff, same scaling value, and he is in a really good spot right now. Jakiro 4, I usually didn't like. Jakiro is just, he's very slow, so he's not good at having to contest camps. Like, even though once he's there, he's strong at the fight, but if they bring 2 heroes, you can't get out on your own because you're a very slow hero. So anytime you have to do like creep dragging or go contest a small camp as a position 4, it doesn't feel good. Your early game damage is all damage over time. So if they're just sitting under the tower, they get the extra armor to block your double attacks and the regen to reduce your damage over time abilities. So I don't like position 4 Jakiro at a high level, but the recent change to him does make it better than it used to be, especially if you take Twin Terror. I think it might give you enough laning power to make it work and then be a greedy position 4. But throw all that out the window, because when the enemy team can't control lanes and it keeps shoving back and forth, then position 4 Jakiro, totally okay. So you guys can play him if you want. Dark Willow, I think, is fantastic in pubs. She does so much damage with Bedlam. A lot of people don't expect it. You can bait them all in with Shadow Realm and then just solo kill cores with that ability. And that's always great to have that kind of self-control in a game where you can do a lot with just level 6. I moved Ringmaster and Muerta down a tier, but they could easily go back up. The thing is, they do the same stuff that the pros can do with it. So if you learn to do that, fantastic. The reality is that they are all skill shot, essentially. Muerta especially, but Ringmaster to a degree, it's a little funny to think of them as skill shots, but you don't get any guaranteed value from any of his abilities unless you use them a certain way. Because of that, it can be very difficult for the average pub player. If you want to dedicate the time to learn these heroes and you get really good at the skill shots, then that's fantastic. I think you're going to do great with them. But if you're like, I'm just going to whip it out. Zach says Muerto's an S tier hero. I'm just going to try it. If you can't land those dead shots, you're going to be worthless. If you can't land Tame the Beast and Impalement Arts, you're going to feel so bad. And I don't mean to say that to scare you, but that's just the reality. Like, these heroes do not, it's not a Warlock. Press Q on a hero, Fatal Bonds, Team Fight 1. Press Alt in a big AoE, easy, right? It's like, I missed Impalement Arts. It's on a huge cooldown now. It's like, dead shot, whiffed. Didn't get any damage, didn't get any crowd control. The calling, it's so short range, I didn't get the silence right. Like, it's so difficult if you can't land these skill shots. And that's why their win rates tend to be really bad in pub games. So if you want to play these heroes, you must dedicate a certain amount of time to become good at the skill shots, and then they'll be great for a really long time, I imagine. But if you're just trying to like casually play them because you're watching this tier list and you're like, Zach says I can do it, you're not going to have a great time. Bounty Hunter is very hit or miss in pubs. He is good when the game is endless chaos and there's a lot of fighting because you're getting a lot of track gold, but some games have a lot of passive farming, and then you're really sad that you're Bounty Hunter. If you take the through and through facet, your farming speed is better than it used to be. So I think if you love Bounty Hunter like I do, you can still play him and just hope that pub games are more active. And then learn how to creep drag so that your lanes can go better. That's not strictly required in a lot of pub games. If you win the Sentry War, you can just play the lane, and that actually works in a lot of pubs. But if you do learn to creep drag properly, it'll give you a lot of options for Bounty Hunter. I recently played 2 Bounty Hunter games that I think went pretty well. They're on the recent VOD channel. I think he's in the thumbnail, so you can go check it out there. I think it's got the eye tracker. I think it's in that VOD. So you can see everything I'm looking at to get a good Bounty Hunter game. I think there's a Night Stalker game in there too to showcase why it's good, but I think that one was really toxic, and I think my behavior score went down. Not unjustly. I didn't do anything to deserve it. I just think I got reported by toxic people in that game. Venomancer. The jungle Venomancer is good in my opinion, but it's a huge meme, and you really need an offlaner who knows what they're doing. So I don't do that. What I recommend instead, play the lane, win the lane, and then go jungle near the lane. And I think that's a good middle ground approach that can get you a lot of farm while still like helping the offlaner in a way that they don't need to learn a whole new way to play that we don't trust a random offlaner to do. Shadow Demon, I think his laning stage is just not as strong as it used to be, especially when you compare it to many of these other position 4s. I do think his ultimate and the disruption save are still good in the right games. And a lot of people don't expect the damage coming out from stacking Shadow Poison. So if you spend the time to learn it and get a feel for it, you're going to be great. But if you want to just learn a random hero on this list, I'd recommend maybe one of these other ones first. Lion still does the same Lion stuff. I just think the numbers aren't amazing. The like Hex and Stun, I think Shadow Shaman's in a better spot because you also have Chicken Fingers. I just think the long cooldown on his ultimate, it's a pick-off ability. So, like, I know Warlock's ult is also quite long, but Warlock's ult is coming online sooner with Black Grimoire, and then hopefully winning a whole team fight, which is a big impact, Finger is a single kill. So when we think about all the early objectives, the Finger kill is just like, I got 1 kill, so I got the Shrine, but now it's still on cooldown, so we miss out Tormentor, we miss out Power, and we miss out whatever. Okay, it's back online, right? It's just too long, I think. Pub games, much slower pace, so if you want to play it, it'll still work. ET, if you know how to play ET, you can win whatever. Like, let's be real. ET players, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not an ET player, you're not going to become an ET player. Let's be real. Earthshaker, I think his lane is a bit too weak right now, but you'll get away with that in pub games, and then you'll eventually get to the Blink Echo, and that'll always be good impact. Skywrath, I think you can make it work. Go for the Atos. Atos is in a pretty good spot right now. Get a lot of damage in. Don't spam your Qs in the lane. It's bad. Even though it got buffed, just save it for the actual kill attempts. I do think he could be better with the recent buffs. Not at the pro level, because if you compare Skywrath to all of these guys, for example, your team has the Skywrath 4 and the enemy team has the Night Stalker 4. The Night Stalker 4 is going to get on top of Skywrath and kill Skywrath before he can do anything. That's why we don't see him very much, but you're not going to run into that in your pub games nearly as much. So if you like Skywrath Mage, you could still do it. Mirana 4, also going to be okay. Arrow and the Q, the blind that you have, just got nerfed. That's why the pros are playing her less. Pub games, still going to be okay. You land that lucky arrow, you're going to do great. Passive games, just like arrow some creeps to farm up, it'll be fine. Zeus got some nerfs. Greedy lane, I still think it'll catch people off guard in pubs if you learn your damage threshold, and you can have a good start that way. Vision is still really good in pub games too. I mean, pro games as well, but it's good every game, right? So you still have some stuff going your way, even though the vision range did get shrunk down. I do think it's a bit greedy, and you have to understand you're dealing with the prejudice of the offlaners who have run into many core players who are like, I'm support Zeus, and they just AFK farm, right? So you have to play Zeus properly as a support, and it's a little tricky. So you get some people who are kind of toxic to you unfairly, whether you're going to play correctly or not. But he can work if you want to. Play around Misanthropy for Leshrac and the stun. It's pretty good, but Misanthropy should be getting you a couple kills in the early game using Diabolic's Edict, the insane amount of damage as they, wander away from the lane. Just walk next to the support, press W, and kill them. Undying, I don't like Undying 4 because you need to run people down after you decay them and you drop the tombstone and a blood grenade to kill them. And guess what? You can't do that when you're right in front of their tower and they're just under the tower. That's why I don't like Undying 4. But in many pub games where the position 1 carry body blocks the first wave and then shoves the lane out right away, you can do it because now it's in front of your offlane tower. That's not supposed to happen, which is why it's not good, but it does happen, and that's why Undying 4 does work in your pubs. Crystal Maiden, I'm open to Crystal Maiden 4. I see it enough that I don't think it's, like, of all the position 5s to be played as a position 4, I think Crystal Maiden is just in the threshold where I accept it, but I don't love it. But in pub games, it'll be fine. Magnus 4, Magnus is a really popular core, even though we got nerfed. There's only a few Magnus support players out there, you crazy people, but boy, can you hit skewers and reposition the enemy into terrible spots. So as long as you can do that, you're going to have a lot of value on Magnus. Just learn how to play the map. You don't get to be nearly as farmed, of course, but if you know how to survive the first 15 minutes of the game into the blink, then you're going to be good to go from there. Same deal with Tusk, but you can have a much better start just because your abilities are better for it than the Magnus. Natures, this is a greedy pick. You got to know what you're doing to make it work, but pub games just have so much space and are terrible with dealing with split push and extra rotations. If your map awareness is good, you can have a lot of impact with Nature's Prophet. I need to try Clink support more. I saw, I think, Crit and 9 class play it in at least pubs. I think in some tournament games as well. I love Clink support, but it did get nerfed in the past. I don't think it strictly got buffed, but the items like Orb of Corrosion are kind of good for it. And then there's just a lot of extra space on this map. And in a pub game, you could definitely make space to find the farm to make this work. And then you're running around Invis, which is always a huge strength in pub games. Pudge, you guys might hate to hear this. Pudge is decent in pub games because of Hook. Repositioning is extremely strong. Oh, Zach, my Pudges are useless. I know. It's a big range. There's useless Pudge and there's good Pudge. And it all depends on how well you know to hit hooks and how much you know to do in the lane when you don't have Hook, as in pulling and denying camps and all of that. Good Pudge players recognize the hero's not great, but you can still find success in the chaos of a pub game by learning how to play without Hook, the creep drags, the denies, all of that stuff, and then get the hooks to get the kills, and then you're good from there. The laning stage is the hardest part for a Pudge to find success. The mid-late game, I think you've all seen the hooks and the BKB piercing ults, do well. Don't really like Abaddon 4 or Oracle 5, but for the same reason they work as position 5s, they will work as position 4s, and their laning stage weaknesses will not be an issue when people don't maintain creep equilibrium. Nyx Assassin in the C tier. Mind Flare no longer kills creeps instantly, so your farming speed is really bad. But the thing you have going for you in pub games is that Invis is good. And so you will still find a lot of people scattered around. You'll find the individual pickoffs and then have impact that way. But your early game is way worse. That's why you don't see the pros doing it. But that's not as big of a deal in pub games. Tiny, I think same deal. His laning stage is just not good, but you can get away with it in pub games. Bat Rider, similar deal. He actually just got a buff where the lasso is not broken by certain mechanics. Many of them were not a huge deal just because the frequency of which you would run into those heroes, but he's a very greedy 4, and it can be tricky to make him work. Your advantage that a lot of people don't expect the flame break knockback and the damage you bring in the lane, But then you need to be a little greedy to farm a reasonable Blink Dagger, and that is something your teammates may not be as familiar. Like, hey, you're making stacks for me, that's awesome. And they're like, I'm reporting you now, you're farming them. And you're like, no, you misunderstood the whole time. These were my stacks for my own Blink Dagger. So there's some trouble there to make it work in pubs. But Blink Lasso and then 4-staff people out of position, you're hearing me say a lot, but repositioning is always extremely strong in pub games, and that's something Batrider brings. Something Marcy brings as well with Dispose, with her giant hands when she uses it. It's good. I think the W buff, the one where you do extra damage as you like pull your ally along, good. You gotta need some coordination on this. She's gonna fit the type of hero like Snapfire. You need good coordination. We're going in now. Like, I'm bringing you. And if they're not ready for that, then it's going to be a huge waste. You're delivering kills to the enemies. But as long as you have a good start, you'll reach the point where you just kill people with your ultimate. The tricky part is getting a good start. I think Dark Willow, it's much easier. Like, you just need level 6. You don't even need any items. They will like, oh, Dark Willow, easy kill, run up to you. And you press W, you press Bedlam, and you kill them. Marcy, way trickier to make it work if you fall behind and you don't have a couple items to give you damage on your ultimate, because it's physical damage. You need items to do damage. Hers is all spell damage. It's worked in. So that's why I think she is just a harder version of Dark Willow right now. I know they're different in the way they function, but if you just want to kill people with your 4 support, then like I would go Dark Willow right now. Dawnbreaker does work as a position 4. She's been nerfed, so she's not as popular as you used to see, but the global rotation with the ultimate is always going to be good in a pub game, and many people just underestimate the damage you bring with W and Q, but it's just not as easy as a support, and you don't get a little bit of free healing from Luminosity, stuff like that. And because you're a support, as a core, it's easy to stand in the lane and they walk up to you, and then you start doing the spell combo. As a support, you don't have an excuse to just sit by the creeps as much, so it's like harder. You have to walk in, and then they're like, do I want this Dawnbreaker support to walk up to me? No, and they walk away. So it's a little harder to find the fights, but people make mistakes all the time, and so you can find success. Snapfire just got a little buff, but I was just saying, like with Marcy, Cookie is so difficult to use correctly, especially with teammates. And then the ultimate is fantastic damage in the early game, but you need someone to set it up for you, and how many of your pub games just don't have a stun in them? It happens a lot, and then your ultimate is going to be extremely difficult to land. So if your teammates have already shown some heroes and they got stuns, then fantastic. It's so easy to play Snapfire when someone stuns and you just drop the ult. When you're like, oh, you want to go in? I'll cookie you, and then you can use your stun. So easy. If you got a friend, you can make it work. If you're playing solo queue, I find it very frustrating. I don't like dealing with it, and she doesn't have as easy of a time scaling as she used to be, so that's why she's down here. Pugna ult no longer heals mana. That gave him a lot of value as a heal bot. His lane is very good, though, because he's so fast with long range. You just, like, poke people down, so it's pretty consistent, and then you take towers with your Q, and, I don't know how often you were helping your teammates in pub games anyways. The way the keeper is, it has to be reliant on teammates. You can use your ultimate just for damage, and so I'm a little bit more open to it. I think you can maybe even bump him up for pub games, but I do think the correct way to play Pugna support does require team coordination, and it did get nerfed on his ultimate, and so I have him down here for now. Gyro support works if you want it to. It's just a bit greedy, but it's kind of the same as it used to be. Strong lanes and then good scaling potential. Grimstroke, so much coordination required with the ink swell, the double ult, stuff like that. So I don't really like trying it in pub games, but if you play with anyone or you just love this hero, I do think it can catch enemies off guard, how much it does. Fine Art is slowly being buffed a little bit. I think it's a really cool facet. I hope it'll be good, and then you'll see me playing it, and then we'll talk about it then. But for right now, I just think the coordination required is so tricky, so I have him lower down. Same thing with the Keeper. I don't need to repeat it from the pro tier. All the stuff that is good about it is the same. It's just infinitely harder in a pub game. And Caudle is the worst case of like the coordination for Snapfire and Marcy and Grimstroke. Like Caudle's is the most extreme case of needing coordination, along with Io. Io is the only one more extreme right now, and that's why Io's even further down here. Bane, I just don't think his lane is as good as it used to be, and that's why you just don't get a strong start. The ultimate is good. The pros can counterplay that shit easily. Pub games, they don't, and so you get a lot more value out of it. So if you really want to play Bane, you can, but I think right now, there's just easier heroes to play that will do something similar. Like, you want to take one guy out of the fight, play Night Stalker. It's different, of course, but like when you just silence on top of someone and punch him to death and you had a very good start, it's kind of like taking one guy out of the fight. The same way your Fiend's gripping someone and it got canceled. Oh, that's it. I don't do anything now. Right? It's not good. You nightmare someone, your own ally breaks the nightmare. You know, it's the same coordination issue as some of these other heroes. Venge's lane just sucks right now. Her swap is still really good, and that's why if you love her, you got a really cool set like I do, and I wish I could play her, but she's just not good right now. But you really want to? Then do it, and just swap people in your pub games. It'll be fine. But at a higher level, the laning stage is just too weak, and you can get the similar value from other heroes without the weaknesses of Vengeful Spirit. Lich ult, I would actually bump Lich 4 in pub games. I'm going to move him here. At the pro level, it's just way too easy to deal with. Dodge him with the dodge the ult by good positioning, 4-staff, things like that. He just got a series of nerfs that just make him worse across the board. His laning stage is more restricted to staying in the lane because that's where he gets his mana from. And so he can't deal with creep dragging and like rotations nearly as well as other heroes. And now his lane is not as good because of the nerfs. So that's why he's dropped down a lot. But in pub games where it is just 24/7 laning, no one knows creep dragging, stuff like that, you do just sit in the lane, and so Lich works. They don't position well, and so your ultimate works, and that's why I think he is good in pub games. Disruptor, you need to know Disruptor. You need to know how Glimpse works. If you do, I think it can work. Your lane is the worst. It's really bad. That's your worst part of your game. But when people mess up the lanes, you get by. And then you get to your ultimate, and that's where Disruptor starts to be good. Typically, you want to be ahead as Disruptor. If you play behind, it feels bad, and you want active play. That's why Disruptor tends to struggle in pubs, is to get that coordinated play. But you do have an advantage in pubs where teams will push way too far, they'll straggle as they retreat, and that lets you get comeback kills because you just glimpse one guy. And of course, he didn't build a BKB, so free PA kill for you, 2,000 gold for the team, you know, and that's your way back in. So it can work. I just don't think it's in the best spot right now. Wyvern, I'm actually also willing to bump Wyvern up. I think it's much easier to get a good ultimate in pub games. The thing is, as a position 5, you do the exact same thing. And I think as a position 4, I just don't love it as much. Like, I think her toolkit makes way more sense as a position 5. Play with the safety of the tower, whittle people down, war of attrition. If you're given a good game and you want to play really aggressive as Winter Wyvern, what is that? What is that? Like, I don't know. And that's why I don't really believe in the position 4 Wyvern in pubs. I know there's Wyvern players out there who are like really mad at me right now and typing is like, you can do all this stuff. That's the thing. You got to be the Wyvern player. And then, just the casual game of Wyvern, I don't think you're going to find as much success as a position 4 as I would like, but the ultimate is so good for pubs. And so I will put in the Bs here. Omni's just not in a great spot. The other say, like, just be Abaddon. If you want to be Omni Knight, go be Abaddon. Your lane will be better. Your save will be lower cooldown. It'll function a little differently, I know, like the ultimate. But your team wastes the ultimate a lot of the time anyways. They don't know to go in. It's just not great. Abaddon's just a better Omni Knight right now. Techies, if you're a good Techies player, we could bump Techies up. His lane is not as good as it used to be, but the ultimate is really strong around Twin Gates and Roshan. Those objectives don't happen in pub games, so now his value goes down again. That's kind of why he's in the C tier. I think if you play at a level where people are active enough, you could bump him up. It doesn't matter that much. He's somewhere between B and C tier. Let's just keep going. Ogre as a position 4, I don't think does as much as Ogre as a position 5. It's like the same deal, but the lane is harder. You get away with it, because as I've said many times, people don't lane properly, so if you really want to do it, you can. Rubik 4... So Rubik's 4, at the pro level, his biggest weakness is that his lane's not good, which you would totally get away with in a pub game. So why is he even lower here? Because it's you guys. No offense. I say this as someone who does the same thing. Rubik is a very tough hero to know the right spells to steal and grab and all that. If you really know Rubik, you can keep playing him. And with the prevalence of Jakiro, you're going to have a lot of good starts. And so if you play Rubik, I would bump him up a couple tiers. If you're just pulling out Rubik the first time, you're going to bait yourself. You're going to go too far on spell steal. You're going to use spells just because you stole them. You're going to get killed. That is why Rubik's win rate is perpetually below 50% by a good degree, because he is a difficult hero and a lot of people bait themselves on it, even if you can bypass the weaknesses that the pros can't deal with just because of how pub games work. So that's why he's down here. Ricky is a weak laner, and most pub players don't know how to actually do the creep dragon correctly. You get by that in pubs. So if you really want to play Ricky, you can. But I think the value of smokescreen in a pub game is not as good. So you would be playing like a scaling Ricky game, which you kind of could. But you could also just do that with heroes who have way better lanes. And I think that would just be easier for you. You do have the permanent invis buff. So in the late game, that's good for you. But compared to the early game, like Bounty has his level 1. You need level 6. So you can punish people in the lane being invis. He can't. So I just think Bounty has more than Ricky, but Ricky has the best scaling potential compared to the Bounty. So if you really like him, you could do it. I just don't love it. That's why he's C tier. Tinker's the same as position 5. You're just not going to get the space, but if the game goes late enough, you will scale up. So you could do it. I just think the ideal Tinker game is rare in pub games. Wind Ranger, I actually think her value is technically better in pubs where you have more scaling potential, but the skill shots will really hold pub players back. No offense, but it's the reality. If you can't land the skill shot, same with like Moirton Ringmaster, then you're not going to have a lot of impact, and they're in a better spot than Wind Ranger, in my opinion. Hoodwink, same deal. Same scaling potential, blah, 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 but you got to land Bushwhacks, you got to land your ultimates, things like that. These are kind of wacky. Viper 4 does work in pubs. You're playing to kill people. Your scaling potential's not good. If you can get kills, then Viper 4 will work, but there's going to be a heavy drop-off. If you do get kills, the drop-off will happen eventually. If you don't get kills, the drop-off happens immediately. And so I don't really recommend it, but of the cores, like Viper 4 is one of the more acceptable ones in my opinion. Tide 4, similar deal, but Dead in the Water just got nerfed, so I like it even less. But you play with Gush in the lane, it catches a lot of people off guard. They think like, oh, Tide, support, Grief, LMAO, and then they don't expect it. So you get the value there, you get the team fight with Ravage, Dead in the Water gives you some early plays. It's acceptable, it's not the best. Same with Lina, you're just playing to punish people that don't expect a Lina. It's not optimal. Mid is her best role, maybe carry as a second. 4 works just because you're gonna harass them down, you're gonna get kills. That's the way you're playing to find success as a Lina in a pub game. Treant, just not in a great spot right now. Too many nerfs. I don't even like him as a position 5 right now, and I'm a Grandmaster Treant. Position 4, you have even worse laning because of the setup of the lanes. You need the safety of the position of the tower as a position 5. Position 4, Treant doesn't get that until the enemy shoves it out all the way to your tower, but you don't even have a tree line that connects to your tower as the position 4 because there's that little gap where that like river section is. So position 4 Treant is just really tricky compared to position 5 Treant. I don't love it right now. If it's better, I would be willing to do it, especially in pub games, but I just don't think he's great right now. Same as Earth Spirit, who then also has a very high skill ceiling, so it's very tough for a lot of pub players. Enigma, very greedy for a lot of pub players, requires micro, but I'd say of these other D tiers, he's definitely better as long as you know what you're doing. Monkey King support's just not great right now. Period. Like, what do you even offer? W, the Facet, Simeon Stride keeps getting nerfed because core Monkey King's too good. There's just not much going his way as a support. Alchemist, there's that the Ags Facet now, you get GPM, but it's just not good enough. They need to like double that number or something, and then maybe support Alk's a thing. Sniper support, since the scatter shot nerfs, just is not good. You can still get away with it for the same idea as Lina, which is like you just kill people because they don't expect it and they don't know how to deal with you. Which if you are struggling with the sniper supports, you just need to get to him. He just constantly pokes and does small damage. You need to waste the scatter shots, and then when he doesn't have scatter shot, it's a really long cooldown, guys. So if you just got bullied by scatter shot, you have to heal up quickly with a salve and then just fight the sniper. And all he's going to do is right click you and waddle, and that's not very strong. So whenever scatter shot's down, fight the sniper. Many people don't do that, and that's why he manages to find success. Lina, at least, is not as limited to the same cooldown, so that's why I think she's better. The way they function is very similar, though. I actually haven't explored Invoker support very much since the new change, so maybe it's better, but I wasn't that impressed with the reading of the patch. So I have him still down here as a very high skill ceiling hero, and then his lane didn't even seem that good, but maybe I missed something and there's something cool there. If you know it and it works, let me know. Primal Beast, I actually think you can make it work in pubs. I would be willing to bump him up, but he's not even in the greatest spot as a core right now, so then his support role is even lower than that. And like, why are you playing Primal Beast? You know, oh, I want to bully people, want to like mess with them and their BKB with my ult, stuff like that. It's like, these guys do that. You know, just play one of these guys. Play like Night Stalker or Spirit Breaker or Clockwork. It'll be the same experience, but better. Naga Siren was a better 5. She has been nerfed support Naga a lot, so she kind of does similar stuff. It's just not as good, and it's not as necessary anymore because the hero pools have shifted around. Io, just way too much coordination for pubs. If you play party games, go for it. Bump him up a couple tiers. Pub games, no. Morphling with the strength facet was a thing for a little bit, and it was really cool. You got a lot of flame for it, but that got changed. It's gone. So he's just in here as a reminder for people wondering, like, oh, I remember Morphling support. Yeah, it's dead. I'm sorry to be the one to inform you, but it's dead. Don't do it. Enchantress and Chen, if you know these heroes, you can play them, but they are also very high skill ceiling heroes, and the style of gameplay they like, very fast paced, miss on that in most pubs. So then you just completely miss the power spike on these heroes. Though Enchantress at least does have a lot of scaling with impetus. So if you want to play one of these, play Enchantress. Faceless Void, also dead because of the leash loss on Time Zone. These guys, psychos. Terrorblade 4 was a thing. You might still be seeing some Terrorblade off lane. So it's like, oh, can I play 4? No, it's just not good. The reflection, not great. You need to farm up as the Terrorblade off lane or carry. And the support Terrorblade needed very little farm because reflection was just good enough. Just not on that spot. Would not recommend. Darkseer support. People always ask, like, can I play Darkseer? I really don't like it. Ion Shell is way better as a core. He's a very good offlane right now. You can probably find success in pub games, but it's just off the chaos of a pub game having way too much farm than you're supposed to. I really don't think of him as a as a 4 support. But if you had to, he's not the worst core to play as a 4 support, so I'll have him in here. Death Prophet support used to be good. I actually think she's sleeper better than what people think of her as, but not that much better. Like, I think a lot of people think of her as garbage, and it's like, hey, she's above the garbage can, but I still don't really want to play her. So if you like Death Prophet, I'm sure you can find some value there, but it's pretty low. Huskar support's a meme, but Incendiary's really good. So you can kind of bully people. It's the same as Viper, but even less utility. So, that's where it is. Sven support used to be a thing, but the Facet got nerfed, so also wouldn't really recommend it. Sometimes I see some lower ranks play Necrophos support. Please don't, guys. I hate it. That's one of my pet peeves. He's really not meant to be a support. He really wants last hits. He needs a lot of farm. Please don't play him. I think that's about all of them. There's probably something I missed. 47 heroes not on here, so let me know if there's one that you're wondering about. But if they're not on this list, I looked through it. I may have just blanked on the mind, but I really don't believe in them as a position 4 if they're not on this list. And I was already extremely generous, in my opinion, to include what I think are some absolutely not position 5s, like Undying, position 4s. Like, this is the position 5. But it works in pubs, and I know I've said that a lot, but I just want it to be really clear, guys. It's important to understand when you're doing something that is good versus doing something and it's working, but it's not supposed to work, but it works because it's a pub game. And I think that's very important as part of the process in improving in Dota, and that's why I'm gonna beat it home throughout this video. Many of these are not position 4s. Go back to the pro tier list. These are the actual position 4s, and some of them barely, like on the lower tiers. Okay, that's it. Thank you for watching. Let me know. See ya. Bye. Watch the other tier list. Watch the other videos. All links in the description. All good knowledge. Bye.